through the davening. And just to see a general recap, so there we're in the section of davening. We're going through the prayers, and we started with the verses of song, which is the first formal part of the davening, which we spoke about in section 14. And now we moved on to section 15, which speaks about the laws of when we could say Kaddish, when we could say Barchu, and the Minyan. And we mentioned this now because really the first section of the davening, Baruch She'amar, and that whole section does not require a Minyan. But the first point where we really need a Minyan is for Yishtabach, so that we could proceed with Kaddish and Barchu, leading us into the section that includes the Shema. And we started by speaking about that's the point when we need a Minyan and how long we could wait for that Minyan and how we go about waiting for the Minyan. Now let's talk about who's eligible to be counted for the Minyan. Okay, so an adult is one whose 13th year has passed and he has entered his 14th year, even if it's by a second. Meaning when you say that you're 20 years old, it means you're already in your 21st year. It means you completed 20 years and you're into year 21. So an adult means a child who has completed 13 years and is now into his 14th, even if it's by a second. And we can rely on the assumption that he has probably grown 2 pubic hairs. In the Gemara, it speaks about how Jewish adulthood actually starts when there's physical maturity. But for all practical purposes in halacha, we can, when it comes to such matters, we could assume that he has reached that physical maturity once he has turned 13, because even if he hasn't, since these matters are of rabbinic nature, we can, when in doubt, we can assume that it is in place. As opposed to if it was a scriptural requirement, maybe, for example, if it was a marriage where it's much more of a serious need to have an adult as a witness, so there perhaps the Rav wouldn't take a kid that had just turned 13 the day before, because we wouldn't assume that he has reached physical puberty. Okay, now he gives different examples of what it means to have completed 13 years and to be into the 14th year. He says, if, for example, the child was born on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so he does not attain adulthood until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that is the beginning of the night of Rosh Chodesh, 13 years after his birth. Meaning you might say that the moment he's on to day 30 Adar, so that's if I was to convert it to the secular calendar to make it easier for you to follow, if a child was born on the 1st of January, we don't, in the year 2001, 1st of January 2001, you won't say that on the 31st of December in 2013, he's already 13, because now he's completed 13 years, because he had 13 years from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. Rather, only once he went into the 1st of January of 2014 would we say that he's actually considered to be 13. So that's the secular calendar, but obviously we don't follow the secular calendar. That's why he's giving examples according to the Hebrew calendar. Now, there are interesting scenarios because sometimes in the Hebrew calendar, there's an extra month. So you could have a 13th month year. So what you could have a child that has been around, now what's 13 times 12? 12 times 12 is 100, so actually, yeah, 12 times 12 is 144, plus another 12 would be 156, am I right? Okay, so if there were no leap years, then it would mean that the child becomes bar mitzvah after 156 months. However, in the Jewish calendar, some years have 13 months. So what could happen is you could have a child that's been around for 156 months, but he still hasn't completed 13 years because some years had 13 months. And then he takes it a step further. He says you could get something really interesting. You could have a child that's been in the world for longer, but he's not bar mitzvah, and another child that's been in the world for shorter, and he is already bar mitzvah, which sounds like something that wouldn't seem to make sense at all. But so let me try to draw it out so you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so here you have, let's call this year 1. And let's say in year 1, there were 13 months. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so here you have a year of 13 months. Okay, now another year could have had only 12 months. Okay, so let's just say that was 1 year. Now we have another year, and this year is actually a shorter year because it's only got 12 months. Okay, now you could have a kid that was born in the beginning of the 13th month, the added month. So he was born there at the beginning of the 13th month. And another kid that was born in the end of the 12th month. He was born there. Okay. Now, the year of their bar mitzvah only has 12 months. Now, the 12th and 13th month get put together into 1 month. So you have over here month 13, and you have month 12. Okay, and 12 and 13 become 1 month. They all go into month 12 because there is only 12 months. So it's like somebody who's born on the 29th of, what's it, April? Which month only occasionally has an extra day?
April.
So if somebody's born on the 29th of April, so when's he going to celebrate his birthday?
No. It's the
That's
29th of
February, Rabbi.
February. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyhow, so let's go back to the secular calendar. So the 1 year had 13 months, and the next year only had 12 months. So both these, but this, by the way, this 12th and 13th month is called Adar A, Adar 1, and Adar 2. That's what the names of this 12th and 13th month are. Okay. So, and then this month would just be called Adar. So people that have their birthdays in both Adars would celebrate it, whether they had their birthday in Adar 1 or Adar 2. And this year, they'll celebrate their birthday on the same day, on the day of the month that would have been whether they're in Adar 1 or Adar 2. Okay. Now, this kid who was born at the end of Adar 1 is now going to need to celebrate his birthday at the end. So let's just actually label them. So this, we'll call him A. No, actually, that's just right. So we'll call this kid A. And this kid is B. Okay. So now the kid who's A is going to celebrate his bar mitzvah at the beginning, at the end of the month, because that's what his birthday is. Let's say his birthday is on the 29th of the month. So he's going to celebrate his birthday on the 29th of the month. The kid who's B, since his birthday was at the beginning of Adar, so he's going to celebrate his birthday at the beginning of the month. So now it turns out that the kid that's having his bar mitzvah first was actually born last. And the kid that's was born first is having his bar mitzvah last because the 2 months got put into 1 month. So let's say it was the middle of the month. So at this point, when we're in the middle of this month of Adar, it means the kid that was born earlier is not yet bar mitzvah because he hasn't completed 13 complete years, because it doesn't count by months, it goes by years. And the kid that was born at the beginning of Adar, of the second Adar, he already is bar mitzvah. So this is a funny anomaly which exists, which he decides to point out in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, that sometimes you can have a child that is around in this world for shorter and he is bar mitzvah, and another child that's around in the world for longer and is not yet bar mitzvah. Okay.
So, Rabbi, can I ask, what are the circumstances that you have a 13th month?
That's really, we could maybe chat about it beyond the class because it's a little bit complicated, but in just one or two sentences, the lunar year has 354 days and the solar year has 365 days. So there's 11-year discrepancy, and the festivals need to be celebrated according to the sun, meaning in the right seasons. So therefore, approximately every 3 years, to catch up to the solar year, the lunar year adds an extra month, so that actually for the solar year to catch up to it, so that it evens it out. Okay. So that's in short how it works. So that's all as far as eligible age. Something about counting people, which is can come up in any context, not just in the context of davening, and that's section 3, halacha gimel. Care should be taken not to take a head count of people to verify whether there is a minyan, because it is forbidden to take a head count of Jews, even for the purpose of a mitzvah. For it is written, and Saul gathered the nation and counted them by means of the lambs, meaning he told each person to give a lamb, and then he counted the lambs, and based on that, he knew how many people they were. It is so similarly, I don't know why he doesn't reference over here, even when Hashem told Moshe to count the Jewish people, he told every Jew to give a half a shekel, and then Moshe counted the half shekels, and based on that, he knew how many Jewish people there were. So from here we learn that it's not a good idea to count people. In fact, I think it brings about ayin hara, which means it could cause negative things to happen as a result of that. So based on this, it is customary to count them by reciting the verse Eshia Esamecha, which contains 10 words. So I don't know if you've ever seen, we waiting for a minyan in shul, instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you'll say, okay, Eshia Esamecha Avarech. I see my camera's off. So you kind of take a verse that has 10 words in it and you count it using those words rather than counting by number. Or some people say not 1, not 2, not 3, but the custom is to use a 10-worded verse and to use that to count the people. So that's an interesting thing of not counting people, not counting Jews. Okay, now as far as who's considered to be included in the minyan. So everybody that's in the minyan need to be in the same vicinity. You can't have one guy, and that's why, by the way, a Zoom won't work. Because you may all be on the computer together, but you're not in the same space. And a minyan requires everybody to be in the same room. Another reason might be because you need to hear each other. And when it's over Zoom, you're hearing a machine which is duplicating the person's voice. You're not actually hearing the person's voice himself. But let's speak about where people need to be considered to be standing in the same space. So it is necessary that all 10 men may be in one place and the chazan with them. If some are in one room and some in another, they are not considered combined, though the door between them is open. Even if the majority are in shul and the minority are in the vestibule in front of the shul, like the corridor in front of the shul, they are not drawn to the majority to be combined with them. So if you have somebody that's standing out in the foyer, then he would not be included in the minyan. Even though standing on the threshold, even if you're in the doorway, but the door closes in such a way that when the door is closed, you'll be outside, not inside, meaning the door is on the inside of the doorway, not on the outside of the doorway, meaning it opens inwards, not outwards. So you're still not yet considered in the room. All this applies to combining 10 people for a minyan. But if there were 10 people and they're saying Kaddish, Baruch Kaddish, then whoever hears them can answer Amen and can be included even if he is in a completely separate home. Because the sages tell us that even an iron curtain, an iron brick wall, cannot separate Israel from their Father in heaven, provided that there was no filth in that area, because as we've spoken, you cannot say a bracha or anything of holiness in the place of filth or idolatry. So in summary, you need to have 10 people in the room, and once you have those 10 people in the room, then the remaining people that want to be included in the minyan will be able to answer Amen even if they're in a separate room. But the first 10 need to be in that actual room. Is that clear?
Yeah, but today in Israel, they have minyans in open air at distancing themselves 2 meters of each other.
Yeah. So obviously that's not a problem because you're in the same space. But if it was 2 separate rooms, it would be a problem. But if it's outside, even if there's a great distance, as long as you can all see each other and hear the chazan, then that's perfectly fine.
But they still must have the 10 people gathered together, because if somebody is farther out, doesn't consider the minyan.
So now, as long as it doesn't speak about it here in the Kitzur, but as long as there isn't a doorway in between, as long as you're in the same space, even if you're on a soccer field, then you still will all be included as long as you can see each other and hear the chazan. Okay. So it doesn't say, yeah, in one room or in one space, and that space could be a huge space. Similarly, if you were in a huge wedding hall, then even if you're far from each other, you're still in the same room. It wouldn't be a problem as long as you could see each other. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about Kaddish, because this is the first time when you need Kaddish for a minyan. Sometimes there's already a Kaddish at the beginning of davening, but that could also be made up later. Take great care to listen to the Kaddish and to respond with concentration. Certainly at Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah, you should concentrate well, for whoever responds Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah with all his strength and concentration, his decree of 70 years is nullified. Meaning, even a decree that was imposed upon him in his youth may be nullified, even a very old decree. So it's very powerful to be able to answer Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah with concentration. There's a story told of a particular Jew, Chassid, that he said Yehei Shmei Rabbah with so much fervor and concentration that it physically made his body physically fat. I think in those days when somebody was fat, it was a sign of wealth, and meaning that he internalized it so powerfully that it had a physical positive impact on him. The response should be loud, because with this sound you can shatter all the indictments, any negative decrees in heaven, and nullify all evil decrees. Nevertheless, you should not overshout so that people will not ridicule you, thereby causing them to sin. If you're going to scream it out and other people are going to start laughing, then you're making them sin because you're making them laugh at you. And you certainly don't want to make somebody else sin. Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah is said along with the word Yisparech. Afterwards, you should listen to the chazan and respond Amen. And that actually varies in different communities. Actually, in Ashkenazi communities, they just say it without the word Yisparech. They say Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach La'alam La'ol Be'al Maya. They don't say the word Yisparech. In the Kitzur, he said it should. And that's based on another whole long, fascinating discussion as to where to pause before or after the word Yisparech, or after the next few words. Thanks for joining us, and wishing you a wonderful evening, a wonderful Shabbos, and I look